We are diving into what today's business face in the realm of cybersecurity and how they can stay one step ahead of potential threats.
ICP definition, the ideal customer profile definition that matters. It's what distinguishes the companies that are successful and the companies that are going to fail.
Like IBC's 2023 cybersecurity survey found that more than 60% small businesses believe their business is too small to be targeted by a cyber criminals, right? This number rises to 73 when it comes for sole proprietors.
Then we can create a platform that will help software developers to fix security defects in the code as they write that. And this is how our first product was born.
Practical and budget-friendly solutions, I believe, can make a significant difference for our listeners, the small business owners. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, SK, and in today's discussion, we are diving into the essential topic of cybersecurity. Our guest today is Alexander Poizner, an expert in the cybersecurity field with a distinguished career that includes foundational work on the Human Genome Project and his current role as the CEO of Parabellyx, which he leads groundbreaking efforts in securing digital environments. Alexander will discuss evolving cybersecurity threats, strategic defenses for startups, and cost-effective security tactics. Join us as we arm you with the insights needed to protect your business in the digital age. Stay tuned as we uncover how to keep your operations secure and thriving. Good afternoon, Alexander, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Eska. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have entrepreneurs like you. How is the weather? Are you enjoying the weather?
Well, you know what? It's a beautiful day. You finally can leave your house without taking a jacket or an umbrella with you. So it certainly sets the mood.
Right. You're right. We are all eager to dive into your experiences and uncover the lessons that you have propelled your journey into the forefront of innovation. Alexander, you started Parabellyx after an impressive career in various tech sectors. What sparked the creation of Parabellyx?
So, Eska, there is obviously a story behind this, and it's a story of trial and error, I should say. Basically, like most of the startups, right? We didn't start Parabellyx as a software security company. We started Parabellyx as a security automation company. Both myself and the other founder, Eric, who is heading our US division from Denver, we started Parabellyx after a career working with very large companies, and what we've seen is that the security is reactive, and a lot of stuff that security people are doing can be automated. So our idea was to go and start a company that would do a hyper automation, a very high level of automation in the cybersecurity space. Now, what happened is, obviously, we had a great solution. We had conversations with our executive network, and everybody was on board. And then within a year, we discovered that nobody's buying it. And then we started doing an analysis. What's the root cause? Why nobody's buying it? And we realized that most of the people that are in cybersecurity, they don't know how to write code. Now, with the automation, you need to write a lot of code. And with hyperautomation, you need to write even more code. So if you don't know how to write code, if you don't know how to maintain it, then you cannot really have that hyperautomation. And we've pivoted from there. We've asked us a question, well, if there is a problem with having that skill set in the cybersecurity space, how can cybersecurity team help software development companies, so software development teams, to make their software inherently secure? Not secure it post factum, but secure it as the developers write the code. And that's how the idea of Parabellyx as a software security company was born.
Okay. And Alexander, when you were starting, when you launched your company, what kind of challenges you have faced, and how did you overcome them? This question, the answer to this question might help other different entrepreneurs.
Well, one thing that I want to mention, and I think that's going to be a good advice to all of the entrepreneurs out there. I've started Parabellyx, and that's not the first business I've started. I had another company which I sold, and I've started Parabellyx at a point where I had a very extensive network in terms of people that I knew who I would thought they would become my clients right away when I started Parabellyx. Guess what? It never happened. And I think the big reason is even though you have a reputation as a person and they know that you are an expert, you know that you're successful, but nonetheless, everybody would kind of be on the side of caution. And they would look at your company and say, well, you know what, they've been around just for a few months, or they've been around for a year. As a matter of fact, some of the larger customers, which I've all worked before in the past, they started working with us at around 3-year mark. So as you can see, people waited, and you cannot really blame them. I mean, the bigger the company, the more risk averse they are. So this is something that the entrepreneurs have to remember. When you start a business, your network probably is not going to be your first client base. And the other thing that we've discovered, and that's extremely important for entrepreneurs as well, is it's the ICP definition, the ideal customer profile definition that matters. It's what distinguishes the companies that are successful and the companies that are going to fail. So, and again, we made errors. We didn't really set our ideal customer profile definition right the first time. We've actually focused on much larger customers than the customer who became really our bread and butter for Parabellyx after 6 years of existence.
Yeah. As you rightly said, Alexander, like creating and defining the customer profile is very, very important to validate your idea and make it successful, right? And could you share a turning point or a pivotal moment for Parabellyx?
So I think the pivotal moment for us was when we decided that we are not going to be just a service company, when we decided that we're going to invest money, we're going to do R&D, and we're going to create our own product. And that didn't happen in the beginning. We were professional consulting services company in the beginning. We were quite successful at that, but something felt missing. And that moment came when a government organization, Canary, so Canary is the federal organization that works with academic institutions. It works with research organizations in Canada, and actually it also helps startups that are doing technology and academic research. Those startups can benefit from Canary services for free. They came to us and they said, you guys are doing software security. We have a lot of teams that write software or startups that are just starting, and we want to provide them with a package that they can use for free as part of our services so they can understand where are the shortcomings for their application security. And we started looking what we can do for Canary, and we've realized that there is really not much on the market that's there, not from perspective of let's do the scan. There are enough solutions, even free solutions, that can scan the code that developers are writing. But from a perspective of somebody who is not well-versed in security to understand what's going on, to have that advice how to fix this. So when we figured out how to do something that is beneficial for
Very
those
easy,
startups
right?
for free,
Right.
then we started, well, you know what, we can take it further and we can create a platform that will help software developers to fix security defects in the code as they write that. And this is how our first product was born.
Okay. That's a fascinating insights into the birth and rise of Parabellyx into the cybersecurity industry. Folks, as we gear up to peel back on the layers of cybersecurity threats, let's keep in mind how rapidly the digital landscape is evolving. Every day brings new challenges, and staying informed is our best defense. We are diving into what today's business face in the realm of cybersecurity and how they can stay one step ahead of potential threats. Now, moving on, let's discuss the evolution of cybersecurity threats. Like moving into the technical side, cybersecurity threats are ever evolving. What are the most significant threats that businesses face today?
Great question. And there are a few. Obviously, it really depends on the profile of the organization. A lot of time, the threats that are facing the organization are human, and they are targeted at humans. Like we all are talking about, and we're reading in the newspapers about a company falling a victim to financial fraud, where somebody called and pretended to be a CEO or CFO and asked to wire
Right. And this is
a
happening
certain
quite
amount.
often, right? Yeah.
That happens quite often. So this is certainly happening. It's happening even more right now. And with the generative AI technology, where if you have a snippet of my voice and you can generate something that I would say, unless you have a process in place that will be trust by verify, basically, if somebody calls our accounting department and says, I'm Alex, even if they have that generative AI, the on the back end, there is a process where they're going to call and verify, and they're not even going to call me. They're going to call a different person in the company and verify if this is really that something that should happen. So this is one of a type of threats that is definitely big. Ransomware is still big. I mean, but ransomware, look, let's be honest. They're targeting organizations that can really pay money. If you're a smaller business where you cannot pay money, they have bigger fish to fry, to be honest. Right. They know which organizations have money and which organizations don't have money. The other threat that is emerging, but it's happening more and more, and that's the attack that is specific to the applications that companies are either developing or running and have them open to the internet. And this has happened more or less during the pandemic, when everybody went to work from home, and we went from more of a closed fortress environment where everybody came to office and there were lots of network protection mechanisms in the office, to what I call AAA. Anytime, anywhere, any device. Basically, that's how the modern workspace looks like. You can work from anywhere. You can work on your own laptop. You can do it at any time during the day, night, right, whatever. And that's where more and more applications became exposed to the internet. Right. And attackers understood, look, those applications, all of them have code defects. If I can establish what those are, and there are kind of common patterns in those. So if I can establish what those are, I can get inside the organization through the application. I can get to people credentials. I can have
data,
I can download the data, and I can further attack organization from within the application, pivot to other things in the organization. So that is one of the top emerging threats. And believe it or not, it almost overtook that human-centric attack, the phishing and the vishing. It almost overtook it last year, and it might overtake it as the most frequent attack this year.
Right. As you rightly said, like following on that, like most small businesses don't believe they will experience a cyber attack. Yet many employees are concerned they are putting their organizations at risk, according to a recent poll by Insurance Bureau of Canada. Like IBC's 2023 cybersecurity survey found that more than 60% small businesses believe their business is too small to be targeted by a cyber criminals, right? This number rises to 73 when it comes for sole proprietors. Like, how should businesses adapt to these changing threats effectively?
So, first of all, one of the things that they should do is they shouldn't consider cybersecurity as a trend. A company X does this, that company is in my industry, therefore I have to do this as well. What you have to do, and this is more about how you kind of set up that whole cyber security mentality, you have to understand two things. First thing that you will do is you will look at the cybersecurity insurance. A lot of companies are taking cybersecurity insurance, even smaller ones, not because they believe that they're going to be attacked, but because if you want to do business with large organizations, sooner or later those organizations are going to ask you about that
Because of the
insurance.
requirement, they are using the insurance, right?
Exactly.
Not because safeguarding their own business.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So those organizations, they want to transfer some of those insurance costs to their vendors. And therefore, even smaller ones have to take it out. Now, cyber security insurance is going to have some requirements. And I'm going to suggest to every single entrepreneur out there to take those requirements seriously, because what happens if you get attacked? And what happens if you didn't fulfill those requirements? Cybersecurity is not going to pay anything out. Now, in a good scenario, you're just losing some money on your operations and you're losing customers. In a bad scenario, you are now liable to your customers, and you're liable for some regulatory fines and costs, because at this point this amount is much bigger than just what you lose from as opportunity cost, as well as the loss of business.
Right. Understanding these threats, Alexander, is, I think, very crucial for our listeners, especially the small business owners, to anticipate and mitigate potential risk. Now, let's discuss the challenges for startups. Selling to large organizations and government is a notable challenge for startups. What has been some of the hurdles in the area for Parabellyx?
Well, it's a great question, because this is also going to relate to pretty much every single technology company that will try to sell to governments. And not just governments, it's big banks. It's, I'll be honest, right now, those challenges even happen with some medium-sized companies. First of all, every single time you're going to approach government or any large organization, what they're going to do, they're going to look at something that they call vendor risk management, vendor risk assessment. They're going to look and say, hey, you know what? Are you doing what you're supposed to do from the security perspective? But it used to be that they're going to give you a questionnaire, which sometimes has 100 questions. Now, it used to be. Now it's going to be very simple. They're going to say, are you certified? Do you have SOC 2 certification, which is one of the most common? Do you have ISO 2701 certification? And those certifications, they require an external formal audit to happen every single year. So this is the first thing that they're going to look at. Now, most of those certifications did not require to certify that you are actively testing your software code and you are remediating anything that you find. Now, this is changing. This changed because in US, federal government introduced the cyber strategy, which said, you know what, we need to make sure that the businesses that do business with government, they have that attestation. So this is where CISA in the US developed that self-attestation, which also is a formal audited attestation if you're under FedRAMP. But what happens now is that financial institutions and other large companies are looking at what US government is doing, not just in the US, but also in Canada, saying, this attestation, it looks pretty good. Well, it is good because it is based on NIST secure software development framework. It is really good. Now, what they're doing is saying, you know what? Obviously, you don't need to send that self-attestation to CISA, but we would like you to give us a similar attestation, and we would like you to give us the right of audit in case we discover some. So this is something that businesses should consider. The attestation becomes extremely important if you want to work with governments, if you want to work with large organizations, and in some cases, even mid-sized organizations.
And Alexander, can you share one practical strategy or tip for small businesses and startups who are struggling to sell to large organizations?
Well, we discussed the regulatory one. Right? A regulatory one is important because you're going to hit that hurdle. The other one is really how do I approach those organizations? Because there are multiple. If you go up top, for example, we sell to a C-level executive, CISO or CTO. Now, if you go up top, those executives they're bombarded by phone calls, emails, so on and so forth. Your objective is going to be not to go to a decision maker directly, but to find a champion in that organization who would say, hey, you know what? This is something good. Now, there are ways around it. Obviously, you need to do some talking, coffee chats, so on and so forth. There is also, if your services are not that expensive, think about it. Can you provide something to those large organizations that they can simply put on a credit card?
Right.
Because if they can, this is an easier way to get in.
Right.
A lot of time, smaller teams will decide they have some discretionary expenses, not much, but they do. So if you can get a team do the discretionary expense, that's great. And now you can have a logo. So that I would say is important as well.
Thank you so much for sharing those strategies. I think these strategies could be invaluable for our audience of small business owners and startups. Navigating the intricate maze of selling to large corporations and government entities is no small feat. Folks, as we reflect on the strategies that can turn these daunting challenges into opportunities, it's clear that perseverance and innovation are key. For all the entrepreneurs listening, remember, each obstacle is a stepping stone to greater resilience and success. Thank you for tuning into the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We are going to take a quick break. Stay with us, and we will be right back with more insights and stories from the heart of small businesses.
You dreamt big. You made the leap. You and your "we're not stopping at small" business. Doesn't matter you've never done it before. You unlock those problems. You adapt to change. You learn to evolve. You're pioneers in challenging times, finding your own frontiers. Wherever you e-commerce, UPS is with you. So nothing is going to hold you back.
Nope.
Constant Contact delivers the marketing tools your small business needs to keep up, excel, and grow. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall.
Welcome back to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Let's continue our journey into the inspiring world of small business, full of innovation and passion. Friends, let's talk dollars and cents now. Implementing a solid cybersecurity strategy doesn't have to drain your resources. Up next, we will explore some practical, budget-friendly measures that small businesses can take to protect themselves without overspending. It's all about smart investments in your security posture to safeguard your business future. Now, moving on, let's discuss cybersecurity on a budget. Implementing robust cybersecurity can be daunting, especially for SMEs with limited budgets. How can small businesses prioritize their cybersecurity investments?
Great question, Askia. So first of all, obviously we talked about cyber insurance, and they will have some requirements. And like I said, those requirements come as priorities because if you don't address those, you may be liable for a lot of money. Now, beyond that, there are a couple of things that every business should remember. The first thing is that you really want to understand what impact do those cybersecurity threats have on your various operations, right? On your revenue generation, on how you work with the customers, on how you use the data that you collect from the customers, or your internal data or intellectual property. So you need to understand this. In large organizations, this is what we call the threat risk assessment, TRA. And same thing needs to happen in small organizations, only on much less formal. Like you don't need to pay for a formal assessment. All you need to do is say, I kind of understand from the newspapers what the attackers are after. Now, I also understand how my business works. So I want to take a look at every single process, like my revenue generation, how I manage everything, and I want to see how it's going to be impacted by one of those threats.
Right.
And if I need to protect it. Now that you've selected the priorities, now that you know your priorities, it's time to shop around for solutions. And there is one thing that I'm going to say, even if you have money, don't take it easy in terms of I'm going to go and put my credit card out and I'm going to purchase a solution. Because one of the things that everybody has to remember in the cybersecurity world and anywhere in technology world, your total cost of ownership is probably going to be whatever you pay for the licensing or subscription times at least 4. Because you also need to implement, you need to monitor, you need to operate,
Right.
so on and so forth.
A lot of steps are involved, right?
There are a lot of steps are involved. And that's why people are saying, well, you know what, I'd rather buy something than pay for the service. But the cost of the subscription and the cost of license is just tip of an iceberg.
Right.
And that's what people don't understand. That's why when they're saying, oh, managed service is too expensive or services are too expensive overall, there is a reason for this, right? There is a reason because you don't have to operate that. Something that you may or may not even be able to do depending on if you have skills in-house. So that's important.
Yeah. Alexander, are there low-cost but effective measures SMBs can implement for cybersecurity?
Absolutely. So first of all, training employees, like cybersecurity awareness, it's something that you can do free. I mean, there are quite a few organizations out there, and even the larger organizations that sell their solutions for millions of dollars. For enterprises under 25 and sometimes under 50 employees, they give those solutions for free. And this is extremely important because this is what's going to protect against phishing. This is what's going to give your employees a sense of what they should do or what they shouldn't do. So that is something that any organization should do, and they can do it pretty much for free. And then, again, if you're a startup, there are so many resources that you can use. Like I said, Canary, I would suggest to startups, especially the ones in technology and R&D, go search for Canary, Canrie, and they have free resources. They have their cloud, which is free to use for startups and for small R&D firms, where they can get security solutions as part of this for free.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those, resources. Practical and budget-friendly solutions, I believe, can make a significant difference for our listeners, the small business owners. Now, let's discuss the future of cybersecurity. Looking ahead, the cybersecurity landscape is set to evolve continually. What future trends should businesses be aware of?
So obviously AI is the big elephant in the room, right? So let's talk a bit about generative AI, because everybody loves or hates it. Like there is nobody in the middle.
Right.
People either love it or they hate it. Obviously, generative AI can be used for many things. It can be used to write a marketing email. It can be used to generate unique content, including the graphics and videos now. It can be also used to write the code or to create an automated attack by one of those malicious actors. Now, what you have to remember is two things. First of all, I wouldn't really worry yet about AI-generated attacks, other than what we said about AI-generated phishing emails and AI-generated voice of the CEO or a CFO. And this is where what we said, the security awareness training comes in. But one of the things that you want to be extremely cautious about, first of all, using generative AI when it involves your intellectual property. As soon as you enter stuff that is either your intellectual property or customer data in there, believe me, somebody is going to look at it, because this is all stored, this is used for training,
Right.
this is used for other purposes. And we've seen a lot of time that security research can actually go and get this data out. So that's why a lot of larger companies are saying we're going to have in-house generative AI, and we're going to prohibit using this like standard ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. The other thing is the AI that generates code. Right now, you can successfully write a software by giving that generative AI that is geared to writing code a prescriptive and detailed instruction. As long as you ask AI to write smaller pieces of code, it can do it quite well.
Right.
What it cannot do is it cannot write this code without security defects, because there is simply not enough data in the world about how to train AI on the code that doesn't have security defects. Every single piece of code will have some security defects, whether large or small, and they can compound on one top of each other. And this is where, if you are in business of writing software, and if you are in using generative AI for that purpose, and most of the younger software developers will do it, make sure that you have a solution in place that can detect those defects in the code and know what to do about remediating those.
Right. And how is your organization, Parabellyx, preparing to meet these future challenges and also to face such threats?
Great question. So, first of all, Aska, we have our own continuous application security testing platform, which can be used as just a platform, or it can be human augmented, basically, where people can work with our engineers to get an additional remediation advice. What we are also doing is we are giving part of it away, for example, for Canary, for companies that don't have money to do it. On our end, we do what we preach. I mean, we have extensive application security testing, and it's not just about the technology, but it's also about the process, building the process for the testing and making sure that not only you do a scan when somebody submits the code, but also you have more of testing on when application is running in the environment on the runtime, and then the safety net finally when the application is in production. So all of this we are doing as well for our platform.
Great insights, Alexander. Like staying ahead of trends is very essential, and your insights today gave our audience a lot to consider. Now, before we conclude, Alexander, like could you share any advice or final thoughts for our listeners, especially those looking to strengthen their cybersecurity measures?
Well, like I said, don't rush into buying any solutions. Figure out what you need. Figuring out what you need really takes self-exploration.
Right.
It's not about what other companies are doing. Obviously, you want to look for trends, but don't apply those trends directly to you. Make sure that whatever you're doing is directly protecting your main things: your intellectual property, your customer data, your revenue generating processes.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And if you're struggling, there are several resources that you want to turn to. Federal government, they have a website that where they give advice to smaller businesses, and they even for free they tell you what kind of security policies you may want to have. It's all based roughly on NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards in the US. So it's all good stuff. It's going to be applicable when you're going to do business in the US as well. But it's also standardized for Canada for small businesses. So that's where I would go to.
Thank you, Alexander, for your time today. I believe your insights and experiences will benefit a lot of small business owners when it comes to the cybersecurity. Thank you so much for coming in today.
It's my pleasure, asking, and thank you very much for having me.
To our listeners, we hope today's episode not only enrich your understanding of cybersecurity, but also inspire you to apply these insights into safeguard your own ventures. A heartfelt thank to our partners, RBC, UPS, Zero, and Constant Contact. Please remember to subscribe and share our podcast to help us reach more viewers. Your support will enable us to bring you even more engaging content about small businesses in Canada. Visit our official website at CanadianSME.ca for more insights and inspiration. If you found today's content informative and curious about new trending topics within the Canadian small business scene, please drop us a comment below. We are eager to explore subjects that matter to you most. Until next time, keep innovating, stay secure, and help us grow our community by subscribing to our Canadian SME Small Business magazine.